monsters. I haven't talked about monsters in a while. And let's talk about the kind of monsters a lot of the little short stories I play around with tend to have. Sometimes they're good, sometimes they're bad. But let's talk about the unseen, the poltergeist aspect, in both a weight of a haunted heart and in Love and in Death, which has a trigger warning. It's the scary aspect of there is another person in the room with you, but not. I think a lot of my fascination with this sort of thing, it comes with what I've experienced, and not necessarily ghost stories. I know I shared a while back my encounter with a ghost, and then another family member is like, hey, what are you doing here? And I'm like, oh, you can see him. I kept seeing it during the day, and so I'm always confused about people like ghost hunting during the night because there's more to it. Anyhow, I also grew up with an uncle who has schizophrenia, and there are no words to describe someone who sees and interacts with other things, and he knows that no one else sees it. Because I clearly remember I had to run him up to the gas station for something, and I was like 15, 16 at the time. I had just started driving, and he comes up, and as he's walking down the driveway, he's talking to someone who is not there. He gets into my truck, he rolls down his window, and he says, you stay here because you'll scare her. He starts punching out the window, rolls up the window, and then turns to me and says, hurry and go. So I've sort of experienced this aspect, right? And I think that's why a lot of the short stories you'll notice play around with this idea that you're interacting with something that no one else necessarily sees. And then I bring it up a notch, whether what would be the worst case scenario, or what if they're impacting the world around you? How do others take that in? So one of the first pieces I did was in Love and in Death, and the reason why this has a hard trigger warning, it's basically the what if you had a stalker and you finally got rid of the stalker, like he died, and he continued stalking you. That's a very scary concept. Very nightmare fuel for sure. The other one is Weight of Haunted Heart, and it's what if you had the toxic boyfriend but no one sees him, but because he's destructive they think it's you doing the destruction, right? And you're trying to get help, but how do you solve that? How do you get help for something no one has zero control or understanding or can physically see or interact with anymore? And there's a very scary, monstrous concept. I always say that the scariest monsters are the human ones, and this gives those wretched humans a leg up almost. And I think that's what makes those stories so unnerving. That doesn't mean I always portray them. I think there's two short stories, Flowers on the Grave and Destiny's Game, that play with it in a different sense, with sort of a guardian angel or remorse, or almost like romanticizing the concept of being remembered in quite a way. But as far as ghosts, poltergeist, being possessed by something invisible, the unseen, is the unknown element of that is very scary. And depending whose POV you're in, or which ones you're switching between, can change drastically how this unfolds. I know in Love and in Death, we first start in her POV, and then it's all the police officers' POV after that. And it's a very unnerving experience for you and the officer as he's trying to piece this together. And he just keeps asking, who unlocked the door? Who unlocked the door? Right? And then you have Weight of a Haunted Heart, where someone finally catches something, finally sees some hint, some proof, though there's no way to label it. The other thing that is glorious about the unknown and the invisible and is giving them the power to destroy the world around the character they are haunting, right? Or the place that they're haunting. I think the idea that this unknown, unseen, untethered thing can physically bring harm to you is a very, also, again, it comes back to that building on the idea that we're trying not necessarily scare anyone, but it's to add those layers of being unnerved and letting the imagination do the haunting. So that's my monster. The invisible, the unseen, the poltergeist of worlds that I think are very monstrous at times.